Be it the unexpected encounter. Lana's heart raced as she moved deeper into the dark, damp cave. The sound of her boots echoed in the silence, every step making her more aware of how alone she was. She had crash-landed on this alien planet just hours ago, and now she was trapped. The comms were down, her ship was ruined, and her team was missing. She hadn't seen anyone since the crash. As she carefully navigated the jagged rocks, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. It was the strange feeling that crawled up your spine, the kind that told you the world was not as safe as you thought. The cave was quiet, but her senses screamed that she wasn't truly alone. Lana paused and glanced around. Her breath came out in shallow gasps. The walls of the cave were slick with moisture, reflecting the faint light from her helmet's flashlight. Shadows moved and shifted, but they were just her imagination, right? The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and she quickly adjusted her pack, trying to ignore the cold chill that ran through her body. She couldn't let fear control her. She had to stay strong. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the cave, sending her into a crouch. Lana's pulse quickened. The growl was unlike anything she had heard before. It was deep, almost unnatural, vibrating through the walls. She felt it in her bones. Her mind raced. Could it be one of the predators native to this planet? She had read about the creatures here, but this didn't feel like what she'd imagined. This growl was more intelligent. The way it reverberated made her think that whatever it was hunting. Stay calm, she whispered to herself, reaching for her weapon. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating faster. She couldn't let herself be caught by surprise again. Lana slowly turned to head back the way she came, but she froze in place when she heard another noise. This time it was closer, a clicking sound, rhythmic and deliberate. Her mind raced. What kind of creature could make such a noise? She was about to move again when a shadow shifted across the wall in front of her. It wasn't her imagination. The shadow was too large, too real. Something was out there, something alive. Her grip tightened on the weapon as she crept forward, trying to make herself as small as possible against the cave's wall. Every instinct told her to run, but she knew better. Running would only make her a target. The growling stopped, replaced by the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. They were heavy and purposeful, dragging slightly across the cave floor. She could hear them getting closer. Lana held her breath. Her mind raced through every possible escape route, but all she saw were more tunnels leading deeper into the unknown. Her only choice was to face whatever was coming. Suddenly, the figure emerged from the shadows. Lana's breath caught in her throat. The creature before her was massive. It stood on two legs, towering over her by at least 2 meters. Its body was covered in dark, leathery skin that shimmered faintly under her flashlight's beam. The creature's eyes were large and yellow, glowing with an eerie intensity. Its sharp teeth were visible in its open mouth, the growl deepening as it took a step closer. But it didn't lunge at her. Instead, it stopped, sniffing the air as if trying to assess her. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air, and Lana's stomach churned. The beast had no fear, no hesitation. It was studying her, deciding whether she was worth the effort. Lana remained still, trying not to make a sound. She thought of her team, of the danger she was in. The creature's gaze locked onto her, its yellow eyes filled with an unnatural intelligence. This was no mindless beast. This was something far more dangerous. The creature tilted its head, studying her as if it was trying to figure out her purpose. A strange thought crossed Lana's mind. Was it waiting for something? Her fingers trembled on the weapon, but she kept her resolve. She couldn't panic. If she was going to survive, she had to be smart. The creature took another step toward her, and she quickly crouched lower, using the darkness to her advantage. It was then she heard something that froze her in her tracks. A voice. It was faint, barely audible over the growls and heavy footsteps, but it was there. A human voice calling out her name. "Lana," the voice whispered again, this time louder. "Lana, are you there?" Her heart leapt. She wasn't alone. Someone else was here, a human. But who? The creature snapped its head in the direction of the voice, its eyes narrowing as it growled low in its throat. It had heard it too. It was suddenly more alert. more focused on the new sound than on Lana. Lana didn't wait. She bolted, running down a narrow passage guided only by the sound of the human voice. The footsteps of the creature followed her, but they were slower now, distracted. It wasn't chasing her. It was distracted by the noise. She pushed forward, adrenaline rushing through her veins. She had to find the source of that voice. She had to find help. The passage twisted and turned, but the voice kept calling, louder now, urging her forward. And then she saw it. At the end of the tunnel, a figure stood, illuminated by a soft light. A human, tall, armored, and holding a weapon, just like her. "Lana!" The voice was clear now. "You're not alone." But before she could move closer, the ground shook. The creature was coming. A glimmer of hope. The sound of Lana's frantic breathing echoed through the narrow cave as she sprinted toward the distant figure. Every muscle in her body screamed, but she didn't dare slow down. The beast, that massive creature, was still trailing her. She could hear its growls growing closer with every passing second. "Lana!" the voice called out again, and its tone filled with urgency. Yet there was something comforting about it, too. Her name carried through the darkness like a lifeline. Lana's heart pounded in her chest as she twisted around another corner, the cold stones scraping her palms as she pushed herself forward. She was close now, closer to the voice, closer to the hope that someone else was alive in this hellish nightmare of a planet. She dared not look back, not now. If she did, the creature might be on her in an instant. But then, as if fate itself had decided to make things even harder, the ground beneath her feet trembled. A deep rumble shook the cave. Lana's heart skipped a beat. The creature had found its footing. Without warning, something heavy slammed into her side, sending her crashing into the cave wall. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she gritted her teeth, forcing herself back up. The monster had caught up. She barely had time to react before the beast's sharp claws slashed through the air, missing her by inches. The sound of the creature's roar filled the tunnel, its stench overwhelming her senses. Lana's eyes were wide with fear, but there was no time to waste. Her pulse raced, and for a moment it felt like everything was closing in on her. The dark, jagged walls, the screeching monster, and the never-ending maze of tunnels. But then, just as the beast lunged forward, a bright light flared, blinding her momentarily. The sound of gunfire echoed in the cave. The monster howled in pain, its attack halting abruptly. Lana blinked, disoriented, and when her vision cleared, she saw him, a soldier, standing in the entrance of the cave with a glowing rifle aimed directly at the creature. His face was obscured by a helmet, but there was no mistaking the fierce determination in his stance. "Move!" the soldier shouted, his voice deep and commanding. Without thinking, Lana bolted toward him, every step filled with both fear and hope. The soldier's rifle fired again, hitting the beast square in the chest. It screamed, thrashing violently before it stumbled back. Lana didn't waste a second. She ran straight toward the soldier, her heart still pounding, but a small flicker of relief dancing in her chest. She had found someone, another human, someone who could help her escape this nightmare. The soldier was already moving, quickly shifting positions, his eyes scanning the cave for any other threats. "You're not safe here," he said, his voice firm but low. "Stay close." Lana, still breathing heavily, nodded, too exhausted to say anything. She followed the soldier as he led her through the labyrinthine tunnels. With every step, she felt the weight of the last few hours lifting just a little. He wasn't just any soldier. There was an energy about him, an aura of command, as though he had been through countless battles and had lived to tell the tale. "So you're alive," Lana finally managed to say, her voice hoarse from the terror she'd just experienced. He glanced back at her. "I was looking for you," he said simply, though his tone was distant, cold. "Captain Darius, I'm part of a rescue team. We've been trying to reach survivors for hours. You're the first I've found." She felt a surge of gratitude, but also confusion. "A rescue team? Then where's the rest of your crew?" "Dead," Captain Darius replied without hesitation. "Killed by the monsters. I'm the last one left." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had known her team was probably dead, but hearing it so bluntly, so unemotionally, it made it real. Lana's stomach twisted. She didn't have time to mourn. Not yet. Darius led her through several more winding passages, staying in the shadows, his movements sharp and calculated. The further they went, the more Lana noticed the subtle signs of his experience, his alertness, the way his hand never strayed far from his weapon, his precise steps. He wasn't just surviving, he was hunting. Finally, they stopped in a alcove, barely big enough for both of them to fit. The light from Darius's helmet illuminated the area just enough to reveal more bloodstains and signs of struggle on the walls. Lana's mind raced. It wasn't just the monsters they had to worry about. Something more sinister was at play here. Darius turned to her, his expression hidden behind the mask of his helmet, but his eyes were sharp. "You're not safe here," he repeated. "We're not safe here. There's more going on than just the monsters. We need to get out. Now." Lana blinked, her heart skipping a beat. She had barely processed what he was saying when a chilling realization hit her. He wasn't just talking about the creature hunting them. He was talking about something far worse. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Darius hesitated for a moment before he lowered his weapon and pulled a small, weathered data pad from his pack. He showed her a series of images, alien technology, maps of the planet, and strange symbols she couldn't understand. At the bottom of the screen was one sentence that made her blood run cold. "The monsters are controlled." Lana's eyes widened. "Controlled by what?" Darius's expression was grim. "An ancient race, a race that's been using these monsters to wipe out entire civilizations. They've been waiting for us, and we just walked right into their trap. Forced to team up." Lana's pulse hammered in her ears as she and Captain Darius crouched low, barely making a sound as they moved through the dark tunnel. The heavy footsteps of the monster, the one that had nearly killed her, echoed from a distance, but Lana knew it was just a matter of time before it found them. The question wasn't if it would find them, it was when. Captain Darius's sharp, focused eyes scanned every corner, his rifle held firmly in his gloved hands. Lana, too, kept her senses heightened, trying to make herself as small and invisible as possible. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. This was something more sinister, something far beyond her experience. "Stay close," Darius whispered, his voice low but commanding. "The more noise we make, the sooner they'll find us." Lana nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. They were already walking through the aftermath of a battlefield where the monsters and their alien masters played the roles of executioners. But there was something even worse than monsters here, something Darius had hinted at but hadn't yet explained. The aliens, the ones controlling the creatures, weren't just lurking in the shadows. They were watching them, observing them, waiting for them to make the wrong move. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything they did, every step they took, was part of a much bigger plan. And the realization was chilling. They were being hunted, not by the monsters but by the very forces that had orchestrated this nightmare. As they reached a narrow corridor, Darius stopped abruptly, signaling her to do the same. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the walls, then flicked his gaze back to her. "We have to talk," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Lana looked at him, her face a mixture of exhaustion and confusion. She wanted answers, desperately, but the first thing she wanted was to give away their position by making noise. She gave a quick nod, signaling for him to continue. "Listen," Darius said, glancing at the floor as if searching for the right words. "What you need to understand is that the monsters aren't just animals. They're weapons, created by the alien race that controls this planet. We're not dealing with some random species. These creatures are engineered, programmed to hunt, to destroy. And the ones who made them, they've been studying humanity for centuries." Lana felt a shiver crawl up her spine, the weight of his words pressed down on her chest. "You mean, they knew we were coming?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper, her thoughts racing. Darius nodded. "Yes, they've been planning this. They're not just trying to wipe us out, they want to control us, break us. And they've been using these monsters to test us, to see how we respond. This isn't just a fight for survival, it's a game to them." The air around them seemed to grow colder as the full scope of their situation sank in. The monsters weren't mindless beasts, they were part of a greater, twisted experiment. Lana's stomach churned at the thought of being pawns in someone else's game. "So what now?" Lana asked, trying to steady her breath. "How do we survive this?" Darius turned to face her, his gaze intense. "We fight back," he said, as if the answer were simple. "But not just with weapons. We need to break their control over the monsters. We need to find their source, their central hub." Lana frowned, confused. "Their source? You mean the aliens? Where are they? How do we even find them?" He paused, his expression hardening. "That's the tricky part. The aliens are scattered. They're in the shadows, using the monsters to keep us distracted. But there's one place we know they operate from, their control station. If we can destroy it, we breathtaking, eke their grip on the creatures, and that's our only shot at survival." "But that's suicide," Lana said, shaking her head. "You saw what happened to your team. We'd be walking straight into the heart of the enemy's lair." Darius's lips curled into a thin, grim smile. "That's why we need to move fast. And quiet." Just as Lana was about to reply, the ground beneath them trembled again. The monster that had been following them was closing in. Its growls echoed through the tunnel, the sound vibrating the walls. The creature was relentless. It wasn't just hunting, it was anticipating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lana's breath caught in her throat as she glanced at Darius. He didn't flinch. He was already moving, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a narrow shaft in the wall. The small opening barely fit one person, but it was the only chance they had to escape. They squeezed through the gap just as the monster rounded the corner, its massive form filling the space behind them. Lana could hear its claws scraping against the stone, its snout sniffing the air in search of its prey. Her heart hammered against her chest, but she didn't dare make a sound. They were safe for now, just barely. Once they were deep enough in the narrow shaft, Darius slowed down, his eyes scanning the darkness. They were surrounded by silence now, but Lana knew better than to think they were safe. The real battle was still ahead of them. The monsters were just the beginning. "We need to find a way to disrupt their control systems," Darius said in a low voice, his eyes scanning their surroundings. "Once we do that, we'll have a fighting chance, but it won't be easy." Lana nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had been in plenty of dangerous situations, but nothing like this. She had no idea how they were going to pull this off, but she knew one thing for sure: they couldn't do it alone. "Then what are we waiting for?" Lana asked, determination rising in her chest. Darius turned to her, his eyes filled with an unreadable expression. "We're waiting for a plan, and that plan starts with you." The monster's lair, Lana could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on her. Even her own breath sounded too loud as she and Darius crept deeper into the caves, the eerie, unnatural quietness surrounding them like a suffocating fog. It was as though the very air itself knew something was watching. The monster's growls were gone, but the danger had only shifted. What was lurking ahead now was far worse. An intelligence that was cold and calculating, far beyond the beasts that hunted them. The walls around them felt alive, the stone pulsing faintly with a strange energy. Darius led the way, his every step measured, cautious. He had become even more distant in his thoughts, as if every moment was a calculation. Lana could see it in his eyes. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was hunting the source, the heart of this nightmare. But she wasn't sure they were prepared for what lay ahead. "Stay close," Darius murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "This part of the cave is different. They've been here." Lana's gaze flicked around nervously. The cave had grown darker, colder, as if it were feeding on their fear. The walls were lined with strange, unnatural markings, symbols that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. There was no mistaking it now. They were entering something far beyond the monsters. "How do you know they've been here?" Lana asked, trying to break the silence that had thickened between them. "What are those symbols?" Darius glanced back at her briefly. "I've seen them before. These caves. They're part of the alien network, the ones controlling the monsters." His eyes hardened. "We're not just in their territory. We're inside their stronghold." The word stronghold sent a chill through Lana. It wasn't just a place. It was the heart of everything. The aliens' command center, the place where he monsters were bred and controlled, the heart of their nightmare. The sound of distant footsteps echoed faintly through the tunnels, too light, too quick to be the heavy steps of the creatures. Lana's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary cave system. It was a labyrinth designed to disorient, to trap, and whoever, or whatever, controlled it, knew how to keep its intruders in line. Darius motioned for her to stay quiet. He moved like a shadow, his body pressed against the jagged stone walls. Lana followed suit, every instinct on high alert. They rounded a corner and found themselves in a massive chamber. It was unlike anything Lana had ever seen, an ancient technological ruin that seemed almost alive. It felt like they had walked into the belly of some great beast, a place where flesh and machinery had merged into one. The walls hummed with a low mechanical vibration, and strange glowing lights pulsed in the air, casting unsettling shadows that danced across the cavernous space. Lana felt a creeping sense of dread as she looked around. Strange angular shapes jutted out of the walls. Alien technology fused with the rock itself. Long metallic tendrils snaked out from the walls, pulsing with energy, intertwining in patterns that seemed to form some kind of communication. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice trembling despite her attempts to stay calm. Darius didn't respond immediately. His eyes were scanning the room, searching for something. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he pulled out a small, handheld device from his gear and began pressing buttons. A soft click echoed through the chamber, and suddenly, a holographic display flickered to life in the air before them. The image was a map. But it wasn't just any map. It was a schematic of the planet, with strange symbols marking various locations. Darius's finger hovered over one point, a red dot pulsing ominously. "This is their control station," he muttered. "It's buried deep under this mountain." Lana's stomach twisted. "So, we're already here? This is the heart of it?" Darius nodded grimly. "Yes, and we're running out of time. The alien race controlling this planet, they're not just observing us. They've been monitoring humanity for centuries. They've been using these monsters to test our limits, our weaknesses, but their true goal is much worse." Lana's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Darius's voice dropped even lower, like he didn't want the walls themselves to hear. "The monsters are just the beginning. These creatures were created to weaken us, to break our will. But the aliens—" He paused, his hand tightening around the device. "They want to control us. They want to enslave humanity." The implications of his words were crushing. The creatures, the monsters, they were a distraction, a test. But the true horror was yet to come. These aliens were manipulating them, watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly the ground trembled again, but this time it wasn't the creatures. The vibration was too steady, too rhythmic. It was something else. A massive door in the far corner of the chamber began to open with a slow, grinding noise. Lana's heart lurched in her chest. Whatever was on the other side of that door was something far more dangerous than the beasts they'd already faced. "We have to go now," Darius said, his voice urgent. "We don't have much time." The door opened wider, revealing a dark, hollow space beyond. Lana's breath caught as the shape of something immense began to emerge from the shadows. Something far worse than any monster they had encountered so far. The figure was tall, towering even. It stood completely still, its silhouette bathed in an eerie blue light that seemed to emanate from within the walls themselves. It was humanoid, but its form was distorted, unnatural, an abomination of flesh and technology fused together in ways Lana couldn't even begin to comprehend. For a moment everything went still. The air was thick with tension, and Lana could feel the weight of the creature's presence even from across the chamber. It was watching them, studying them, calculating. Then, as if it were responding to some unseen command, the creature moved. Slowly, its massive limbs creaking with mechanical precision, it stepped forward. Darius raised his weapon instinctively, but Lana's hand shot out, gripping his arm. "No," she whispered, her voice steady but fearful. "We can't kill this thing. It's what's controlling them." Darius's eyes locked onto hers, his expression hard. "Then what do we do?" Before she could answer, the creature spoke, its voice low, guttural, and strangely calm. You are not supposed to be here. The hidden truth. Lana's heart pounded in her chest as the creature's chilling voice echoed through the chamber. It was almost too calm, too controlled for something so monstrous. Its words hung in the air like a weight pressing down on her with a terrifying certainty. You are not supposed to be here. The room seemed to grow colder, as if the very air itself was thickening with menace. Darius didn't flinch. He stood motionless, his eyes locked on the creature, scanning its every movement. The tension was palpable. Lana could almost feel the invisible line between them and the creature drawing tighter with each second. The creature's eyes, if it even had eyes, seemed to flicker with something more than just intelligence. It was as if it knew them, knew their thoughts, a perfect predator. Lana's pulse quickened. There was something wrong with it, something that gnawed at her gut. She had seen monsters, countless deadly creatures throughout her career, but this wasn't just a beast. This was something otherworldly, something designed with a purpose. It spoke again, its voice more distinct this time, vibrating through the room. You are intruders, humans. Nothing more than parasites in my domain. Lana stepped forward, her voice sharp, though every word felt like a challenge. Who are you? What do you want from us? The creature let out a low, mechanical chuckle that reverberated through the chamber. You asked the wrong questions, child. You should ask, why are you here? Why are you the last of your kind? Lana's eyes narrowed. There was a hint of something darker in the creature's words. It wasn't just taunting them, it was toying with them, leading them down a path. But to what end? Darius shifted slightly, his fingers tightening on his weapon. Enough games. You want to talk? Tell us what you're doing here. What's your true purpose? The creature's form shimmered, its body flickering between shapes, the cold light from the walls casting strange shadows across its shifting figure. It wasn't just alien. It was constructed. There was no organic life here, just a hollow shell powered by an unknown energy. I am not your enemy, not yet, it said, its voice reverberating as if it came from every direction at once. But you are. You, the humans. You who have survived against impossible odds. You who have defied extinction for centuries. Lana's throat tightened as the pieces slowly began to form in her mind. The truth was unfurling like a dark, twisted flower, each petal revealing more than she ever wanted to know. What do you mean, defied extinction? She asked, barely able to keep the edge of panic from her voice. The creature tilted its head, a sharp mechanical hiss following the movement. You should know by now, human. The war was never over. You thought it was, but the real war, the war you can't remember, is still being fought. Darius's eyes widened as realization hit him. He turned toward Lana, his face grim. The humans. We didn't just survive. We were chosen. The creature nodded, a slow, almost human gesture. Indeed. And that is why you are here. Why your kind is being watched, tested, and measured. Your race was the last to survive the great eradication. Anna's mind reeled. She felt like the ground was slipping from under her. Great eradication? What are you talking about? The creature's form blurred slightly, the room's pulsating lights casting strange reflections on its body. We, the ancients, we are the ones who shaped the course of your evolution. You were always meant to be a part of our plan. But your survival, your resistance, it was unexpected. Lana and Darius exchanged a glance. She could feel the weight of Darius's words earlier echoing in her mind. This wasn't just about monsters. This was something far bigger. A war that had raged for centuries, a war between an advanced alien species and humanity, buried in the deepest parts of history. The creature continued. Your ancestors were eliminated by our hand. We gave you the gift of survival, only to see how you would evolve, how you would fight for dominance. But what I did not foresee was your resilience, your strength. It was not designed to last. I allowed you to grow, to believe that your species had a future. But all this? All of it was meant to bring you here, to this point, where your survival ends, where the extinction of humanity is finally complete. Lana felt a coldness wash over her as the gravity of the situation sank in. The war she had thought was over, the destruction she'd read about in the history books, was not ancient. It wasn't some forgotten conflict. It was still happening. Right now. The creatures, the monsters, They weren't just sent to kill. They were sent to wear humanity down, to break it, to create a world where humans would fall to their knees. But there was more. "What do you mean humanity ends?" Lana whispered, as if afraid to hear the truth. The creature moved closer, its massive form now towering above them. The air thickened, vibrating with a sense of finality. "I am not your enemy, human. I am your savior. You will see soon enough that all this, your struggle, is a test of humanity's true potential, a test for your place in the universe, a place that you were never meant to occupy." Lana's mind spun as the creature's words filled the air, heavy with finality. "You will fail," it whispered, the words like a cold breath on her skin. But before she could respond, the ground began to tremble beneath her feet. A deafening roar echoed from the far end of the chamber, louder than anything she had ever heard before. The monster was not alone. They were not alone. The walls began to glow brighter, the pulse of alien energy growing stronger. The creature seemed to fade into the shadows, its voice still lingering in the air. "You may survive for now, but you will know the truth soon enough." Darius grabbed Lana's arm, his voice sharp. "We need to move now. It's a trap. Everything has been a trap." Lana didn't hesitate. She followed Darius as he led her through the shifting shadows of the chamber, the hum of alien technology buzzing in the background like the heartbeat of some monstrous god. They couldn't stay here. They couldn't stay anywhere. They had only one choice: to fight, to survive, and to uncover the truth before humanity's extinction was sealed. The hidden truth. The aliens' words still hung heavy in the air, their chilling finality reverberating through Lana's mind. It wasn't just a monster they were up against. It was a force. An ancient, calculating force that had been watching humanity for centuries. And now, for the first time, it had spoken to them, revealing the truth in the most horrifying way possible. "You are not supposed to be here." Lana's heart pounded in her chest as the creature's form seemed to flicker and distort in the dim light. It wasn't just its shape that unnerved her, it was the unsettling calmness in its voice. It wasn't angry, it wasn't frustrated, it was just resigned, as though it knew exactly how this would end. Darius stood still, his rifle lowered but not completely relaxed. His eyes, though steady, betrayed the tension in his body. He was calculating, analyzing. Whatever this creature was, whatever it represented, it wasn't something he had ever encountered before, and that made it infinitely more dangerous. Lana's breath caught as the creature's head tilted, its form bending and stretching in unnatural ways. "You, the humans," it murmured. "You were never meant to exist beyond the eradication." "Eradication?" Lana's voice barely rose above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile thread of control she had left. The creature's glowing eyes fixated on her. "Yes, the great eradication. Your race was the last of the survivors. Your ancestors. They were meant to be wiped from existence, a failed experiment, a blip in the vast timeline of evolution." A cold shiver ran through Lana. "What do you mean?" "We've always known we survived the wars, the conflicts with the alien races," she said, struggling to keep her voice even. The creature's laugh was a low mechanical sound, as if its voice box couldn't fully contain the venom in its tone. "You are so naive. The wars you speak of were but a distraction. The true purpose of your existence was to serve as a vessel for something far greater, something we had long planned. You were to be the key to our survival." Lana's stomach twisted. She could feel Darius's presence beside her, his silent strength offering no comfort as the truth began to sink in. "Your entire species was bred for this," the creature continued. "You were meant to be the culmination of our plan, the warriors, the workers, the tools. And when the time was right, we would reclaim you." Lana recoiled. "Reclaim us? You mean you were going to use us?" The creature's form shimmered again, its voice now tinged with a dark amusement. "We already have. The monsters you call beasts are not mindless creatures. They are our creations. They were engineered to keep your species in check, to make sure your kind never truly mattered. The words hit Lana like a physical blow. She staggered back, her breath shallow as everything she thought she knew about humanity, about survival, began to unravel. She had always known there was something off about the monsters, but she never imagined this. The creatures weren't just random threats. They were designed. Why? Why would you do this to us? Lana demanded, her voice rising, the fear now giving way to anger. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for answers, for justice. The creature's eyes glowed brighter. Because your kind survived, against the odds. The great eradication failed. You humans should have been erased, but you resisted. And that was the flaw. It was never part of the plan. The fight for survival. The air was thick with an eerie stillness as the alien creature's words echoed in their minds. Humanity has already lost. The gravity of the statement clung to Lana's thoughts, like a shadow that refused to let go. But even in the face of the terrifying truth, something within her refused to surrender. Not yet, not without a fight. Darius was already moving, his eyes steely and focused, scanning their surroundings for any sign of the next threat. The glowing energy from the walls had begun to intensify, casting an unnatural light across the chamber. It was as if the entire structure of the alien stronghold was reacting to the creature's words, shifting, awakening. Lana could feel it. The impending doom closing in, yet it wasn't just fear she felt, it was an urge to push forward, to act, to fight. "We can't let it end here," Darius muttered, his voice low, tight with resolve. "We don't know how long we have, but if we're going to make it out of here, we need to take down their control center. We destroy it and we break their grip on everything." Lana nodded, gripping her weapon tighter, though her hands still shook slightly. "So that's the plan? We find this control center and blow it up?" "Yes," Darius said, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But first, we need to get to it, and it won't be easy. We're inside their heart now. They'll be sending everything they have at us." The walls seemed to hum with an almost malevolent energy. The sound of distant machinery echoed from all directions, a constant reminder that they were far from safe. The air around them buzzed, alive with alien technology. Lana glanced around the chamber, taking in every detail, every possible escape route, but it was clear. Their options were limited. They were in the belly of the beast now, and every step forward felt like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, a low, reverberating growl shook the room, a sound that could only belong to one of the monsters, then another, and another. "They're coming," Darius said, his tone now all business. "Get ready." Lana barely had time to react before the first monster lunged from the shadows. It was massive, its sleek, armored form glistening in the harsh light. Its eyes burned a malevolent red, and its fangs bared, dripping with a venomous saliva. The creature was far faster than anything she'd encountered before, its movements sharp and predatory. Before she could raise her weapon, Darius fired. The shot hit the creature square in the chest, but it barely flinched. It roared in fury, and in a flash it was on them. Lana's instincts kicked in. She dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the monster's claws as they slashed through the air, missing her by inches. Her heart was pounding, but her focus was razor sharp. She could feel every muscle in her body working together, every sense heightened. "Move, Lana!" Darius shouted, already on the move himself. He unloaded a series of shots into the creature's head, but the armor it wore seemed to absorb the impact. Lana didn't hesitate. She sprinted, closing the distance between herself and the creature. As it turned toward her, she saw the weak points in its body, the joints, the vulnerable spaces beneath the armor. It was a massive target, but its speed and power made it difficult to land a hit. With a shout, she dove toward the creature, rolling beneath its massive form. She grabbed a grenade from her belt and pulled the pin. The creature's eyes flashed as it turned toward her, but it was too late. The grenade exploded with a deafening blast. The monster's shriek of agony shook the chamber as it staggered back, smoke pouring from the wound in its chest. But the creature wasn't dead. Not yet. It snarled, lashing out with its claws in a final furious attack. Darius was already there, firing again, his shots now aiming for the exposed weak points in the creature's throat. With a final scream, the beast crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Lana collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily, but she didn't have time to rest. The noise had alerted others. She could hear them. More growls, more footsteps, moving closer. The monsters were coming in waves now, driven by the alien intelligence that controlled them. "We have to move," Darius shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her up. They didn't need to speak. They both knew what was at stake. If they didn't reach the control center now, they would be overrun. Every moment they wasted was another moment closer to being trapped, and trapped meant death. The two of them moved swiftly through the labyrinth of the alien stronghold, dodging and weaving through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls began to close in on them, the air growing thicker with each step. The pressure was mounting, but Lana refused to back down. She had come too far. Suddenly, a roar tore through the air, a different sound, more menacing than before. Lana's blood ran cold. This wasn't just another monster, it was something else. They rounded a corner and there it was, a creature so massive it blocked the entire hallway. It was a hybrid of flesh and metal, its limbs grotesquely elongated, and its body a patchwork of alien machinery and biological tissue. It was like the monsters they had fought, but far more advanced, far more deadly. It was an experiment, something that had been designed to end them. The creature's eyes locked onto them, and a low hum emanated from its chest. It was studying them, waiting for them to make a move. Darius raised his weapon, but Lana's hand shot out, stopping him. "Wait," she whispered, eyes scanning the creature. "It's not attacking, it's waiting." The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes never leaving them. It was clear it wasn't just another monster. It was something new, something sent by the aliens to test them, to see how they would react. Lana's mind raced. She glanced around the hallway, looking for anything they could use. They needed to move fast. This was their moment to strike, to take control. If they hesitated, they would be wiped out. "It's a trap," Darius murmured, but his voice was steady. "And we're walking right into it." Lana met his gaze, and for the first time since they'd entered the heart of the alien stronghold, she wasn't sure they would make it out alive, but she wouldn't back down. Not now, not after everything they'd fought for. "Then let's turn the tables," she said, her voice filled with determination. "This ends today. The final stand." The sound of their footsteps was drowned out by the roar of the massive hybrid creature that stood between them and the control room. Its glowing eyes flickered, its mechanical limbs creaked as it adjusted its stance, and the low hum of its internal systems pulsed like the heartbeat of a monster. Lana's grip tightened on her weapon. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was no escape now. No more hiding. "This is it," Darius muttered, his eyes scanning the creature's movements. "We either kill it, or it kills us." Lana's pulse raced, but there was no time for hesitation. They had no choice but to fight. This was the moment when everything they had endured, everything they had sacrificed, would either pay off or be lost forever. The creature let out a bone-chilling growl, its body shifting as it stepped forward, blocking the only exit. It wasn't just a monster, it was the culmination of an experiment, a living weapon designed to crush their spirits and extinguish humanity's last hope. The alien race that had created it had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the final test. And Lana and Darius were about to give them a show they would never forget. "Move fast," Darius hissed, eyes narrowing as he quickly surveyed the environment. The corridor was tight, the walls pulsing with alien energy. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a battle to destroy the source of their suffering, the last chance to shatter the alien grip on humanity. Lana didn't wait for further instruction. She sprinted forward, ducking beneath the creature's massive claws as they slashed toward her. The air was thick with the hum of the creature's systems, and she could feel the heat radiating off its body like the breath of a furnace. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her focus was clear. She couldn't afford to falter. The creature was fast, too. Fast, but it was predictable. Lana weaved through its strikes, her training kicking in as she found the weak points in its armor, a vulnerable spot near its side, the joints in its legs. "Darius now!" she shouted. In one fluid motion, Darius fired, the shots landing with pinpoint precision. The creature howled in pain, its limbs twitching, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It retaliated, its mechanical arms swinging with a terrifying force. Lana barely managed to dodge, but she wasn't fast enough. The edge of the creature's claw grazed her side, tearing through her armor, and a searing pain shot up her body. She stumbled, but only for a moment. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself back to her feet. They couldn't afford to stop. Not now, not with everything on the line. "We have to get to the control room," Darius yelled over the chaos, his rifle snapping off shot after shot, but the creature wasn't giving them any room to breathe. Lana's eyes flicked to the walls. Alien technology pulsed in the veins of the chamber. There had to be a way to use it against the creature. The energy running through the walls was their key. If they could somehow overload it, they could destabilize the entire structure, throwing the creature into chaos. "Cover me!" Lana ordered, her voice sharp as she sprinted toward a control panel embedded in the wall. Darius's shots kept the creature at bay for a moment, but it was getting closer, faster. Lana could hear the whirring of its mechanical systems, the screech of its metal joints. She reached the panel, fingers flying over the strange alien interface. The language was unreadable, the symbols alien, but there was something instinctive about it. A pulse of energy like a wave coursed through her as her hands connected with the console. The creature roared in fury, charging toward her. The ground shook with its force, but Lana was already in motion. With a desperate cry, she slammed her fist against the control panel, sending a surge of energy rippling through the walls. The entire stronghold trembled. The hybrid creature's roar turned into a guttural scream as the alien systems reacted violently. Sparks flew and the walls around them began to crack, the hum of the machinery distorting into a deafening wail. The creature staggered, its body jerking as the energy from the control system fed back into its own internal circuitry. Lana didn't wait to see if it was enough. She grabbed Darius's arm, pulling him toward the entrance to the control room. "We've got seconds before this whole place comes down." They didn't look back. The chamber behind them erupted in a violent explosion, the walls collapsing as the energy coursed through the alien machinery. The air was thick with dust and smoke, and the ground beneath them shook like a living thing. But they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to stop. The control room was within reach, the heart of the enemy's stronghold. They burst into the control room just as the alien systems began to destabilize. The lights flickered as the walls cracked and groaned under the strain of the overload. Lana and Darius didn't hesitate. They knew what had to be done. Lana raced toward the central terminal, pulling out a small explosive device from her pack. The alien interface on the terminal was still active, but the system was malfunctioning, flickering erratically as the entire structure began to collapse. Time was running out. "Darius, cover me," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Darius nodded, his rifle at the ready as he scanned the room for threats. But there were no more monsters. The alien control center was failing, fast. The battle had shifted. They were no longer fighting the monsters. They were fighting the source, the alien force that had controlled their fate. Lana activated the device. A low hum filled the room as the countdown began. The control center's interface started to flash, a red warning, blinking on the screen. But it was too late. The countdown hit 0. The explosion that followed wasn't just physical. It was the pulse of liberation. The walls of the stronghold buckled as the central system was destroyed, sending shockwaves through the entire facility. The entire structure groaned and then collapsed in a massive, earth-shaking crash. The lights flickered once more, then went dark. Lana and Darius stood there panting amidst the ruins of the alien stronghold. The fight was over. For them, for humanity. The creatures, the aliens, the control systems, they were all gone. The alien race that had orchestrated their near extinction was no more. But even as the dust settled, Lana knew this wasn't the end. It was a victory, yes, but the real battle had just begun. They had struck a blow, but the galaxy was vast, and there would be others, other races, other dangers. Humanity had won this round, but their survival was still uncertain. Darius looked at her, his expression unreadable. "What now?" he asked quietly. Lana turned toward the wreckage, her eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the ruined stronghold. She didn't know what came next, but one thing was clear: humanity wasn't finished. Not yet, not by a long shot. "We rebuild," she said, her voice resolute. "And we fight. Always."